you are just joining us, welcome to the Influencers Journey Show. My name is Suzanne Hart. I'm sitting down here with Taria Hodge, social media strategist. And our topic today is how to bring your authentic self to the stage. And it's an interesting topic because I don't think people actually think about that. I know when I started, I was focused on how to get it right, how not to forget what I was going to say, how to nail my training, how to make sure that people got all the content I wanted them to know, all that stuff. Imagine my surprise, Taria, when my coach told me that my content wasn't as important as the context, as the environment I created. I was like, what? How you mean? And it was when I embraced storytelling that I really understood that the environment I create for people to learn, for people to connect, for people to engage was way more important than what I had to teach them. Imagine.
Yeah.
And because remember, people, they don't always remember what you tell them, but they always remember
Mhm.
how they feel.
Yes.
And that's what he was taught, kind of driving home. You got to stir them, you got to move them. And truly, the first time I saw this gentleman on stage, I was moved. I ran through a gamut of emotions to the point where that's how I decided that's the person I want to coach with. If I'm going to learn to speak, this is the person who has to teach me. And I worked with David for 4 years, and just a blessing and a gift. However, it was how he moved the audience that
Mhm.
got me. It wasn't the content. So that's a note there. That's a gift. All right. So our first question we want to dive into is why is authenticity the secret to success and engagement in engaging in a presentation or talk? Why is that the secret? So what do you
Yeah.
think?
So I'm going to share this. So once again, being the behind the scenes person, I've always been the person who never really like understood the power of story and being able to share. It was something like, no, this is what we're here to learn. This is the marketing tip or the marketing tool that you need to do, and let's get right to the training and do what we have to do. There's nothing that more than you need to learn about Taria, right? And really and truly, Suzanne, that's how I operated, for years in my business, sticking to the training. And like I said, the thought of just being, so open and vulnerable and sharing, all of, or some personal things about me, not knowing what to share. And then I'll say this. Another thing that came up for me that I realized that I was doing, I was kind of comparing, my life to the lives of others. And when
Mm,
I say that, I've had the opportunity to go to conferences, events, and seen many of people, telling stories. And one of the persons that's standing out for me right now, I remember the first time I had the opportunity to see Lisa Nichols speak in person.
yeah.
And then, she shared, her story. And I remember though, sitting inside of the audience, thinking like, oh my gosh, my story is not that big.
Mm.
It's like I don't have, a story like that would, captivate and move an audience like I saw her being able to captivate and move the audience. And that's the first thing. And even as I listened to her share her story, one of the things that came up for me in the back of my mind is that's like, oh my gosh, like how did she even get the courage,
Mhm.
to share that and share it not just in a small setting, but go from stages to stages, places to places, and share the story. And so those were the things that kind of locked me in, because I didn't really understand that the power of, sharing a story, and going through what story would I share. And I was thinking that it needed to be like some big earth shattering story to move people.
In the reason that story is so powerful and the authenticity of story is so powerful is that it touches our hearts. And
Mhm.
so I want everyone to consider, I know that. So when I started speaking, it wasn't that I wasn't telling stories. I was telling stories because I was trained to open with a story. I was telling stories. What my coach was telling me was I was skimming the surface.
Mhm.
I was telling the story in the most safe way.
Mhm.
And so people got a picture of what happened, but I didn't impact or move their emotions. I didn't stir them.
Mm.
And so, what we're talking about when we tell stories is using language that stirs and moves people. Using language that creates these connection points inside your story where people can see themselves and experience an emotion as they see themselves. And this is the other really cool thing. When I become vulnerable and authentic on stage, I actually give the audience permission to put their guard down
Mm.
because I'm putting my guard down first. I'm modeling it. And so if you've ever walked into a room where someone is just authentic, real, and transparent, you relax into it because you're like, oh, there's no pretense here. Now, for some people who are not ready, it's as intimidating as all get out.
Yeah.
However, for those who are ready, it's almost like a relief. How many times have you heard people say, "Oh my gosh, I have been feeling the same thing," but no
Mhm.
one ever talked about that. I was stuck in the same place and thought it was only me. I had the same doubt, and oh, I didn't know other people were going through the same thing. How often have we heard that? Well, we hear it because we're trained to be guarded and inauthentic,
Mhm.
show up perfect. But behind the scenes, people are going through stuff.
Yeah.
And all they want to meet is someone who validates
Yeah.
their pain, their emotions, their fears, their struggles, their failures, and then says, I can show you a way out.
Yeah. And I love what you're sharing, because that has been one of the biggest shifters for me in relating, to my clients. And so I used to be, just like you, thinking that it's all about showing up perfect, or
Mhm.
I would go off into a space, and figure it out. And then once I figure it out, then I show up in all my perfection and all my glory. And I'm like, here, this is the answer. But to actually go back and say, hey, I understand exactly, where, how you're feeling, what you're experiencing, because I've been through this. And I remember particularly, in the space of social media, it wasn't until I started to tell people, yeah, look, I've ran some successful ads and had success with ads, but guess what? I've ran some that tanked. I struggled with engagement on social media as well. I struggled with, as an entrepreneur, finding that harmony between your business and life, all of that stuff. And these are the things, when you show up and you share and you're transparent with people, they get to learn a little bit more about you. And then they say, you know what, you're my person. You're the person that I want to lock arms and I want to walk with. So I do have a question for you, Suzanne. So we're talking about all of this. How does one get past the sense of being vulnerable, feeling that vulnerability, that fear, and stop hiding?
I
Because that's
don't
what I
know.
call it. I call it hiding.
I don't know if you ever fully get past it the first time you share something.
Mm,
And so even like when I post, the first time I share a post that I feel puts me outside of what people know or has me express something that's contrary, I feel vulnerable. So
mm,
I've learned that that sense of vulnerability is part of the process. That a little bit of fear that comes up is part of the process. This is what I had to get past. So Black woman of color, Black woman,
mhm.
and when we're growing up, we're told you got to work twice as hard,
Right.
you got to be twice as good, You got to show up perfect.
Right.
And you can't let them see you sweat, struggle, da da da.
Right. Never let them see you cry.
So I'm walking around with this programming, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna tell you people this programming, this conditioning in the back of my mind. And here comes my coach, tall white guy, saying, "Yeah, just put all your stuff out there." That's not what he's saying, but that's what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Because even the little bit that he is asking me to share is beyond what I'm willing to be vulnerable with.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was the thing that got me. I had to ask myself, what's the purpose of sharing this? And this is such a trainer moment. This is such a speaker moment, this piece that I'm teaching. Don't share anything that does not have a purpose for your audience. Because how many of you have ever been out on somewhere and some person drops some big elaborate something, and you're feeling like, oh, I feel kind of uncomfortable sitting here. Whew, I don't know why this is being shared. That's someone who is not actually being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
They're using vulnerability, and it's a very different thing to get somewhere.
Okay.
However, when I sit in the place and I go, what story should I share to really move this lesson forward, to get people to see this point, then the sharing has a purpose for me. And then I can step into my vulnerability because I know when it lands, it's going to be a gift for everybody listening.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when it lands, I can feel it, and then I can build on it. And the audience starts to give me this interplay, because I know, like I know my name, that when I'm in a room, whether I'm in a Zoom room or a live room, when something lands, the energy shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And I can feel it. And so for me, I'm looking for the purposeful stories that serve the audience. And yes, sometimes it requires a lot more of me in terms of what I want to have.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. I think the second thing is, if I show up in all my perfection and in all my persona, and I can do it very well if needed, all I'm doing is creating distance between me and the audience.
Mm.
The people who are really struggling, the people who are really in need of something will look at me and say, that's not me. And how many of you have ever done that?
Oh, yeah.
Someone and said, ooh, that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then they think, oh, she just got it. She got it easy. She just comes easy to her, blah, 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 blah. And we start talking because they're showing us the end result, the finished, polished diamond thing, but they're not showing you the lump of coal that went through all the pressure points and the heat and the struggle for transformation to occur. And so you got to choose the story that gives access to what was needed for you to get there. This beautiful place that allows you to stand on that stage. And that's when vulnerability becomes necessary and it makes sense.
Yeah, and I love what you're sharing, and I know we're talking in the context, of being able to stand, on a stage and deliver a presentation. But one of the things that I really want to, bring this back and talk about it in the social media realm, because this is actually the secret to successful and engaging social media. So I love what you shared when you said, have you ever heard someone take the stage and then they share a story and then you're left wondering why? So on social media, like, I call that the rant. And, we've all seen those posts. We've all seen the posts where someone will, have a great topic that they want to discuss. There's lots of emotional language, inside of what they're sharing, and, rallying the troops around that thought and that emotion. But at the end of the day, after you read that, all you're left with is just like the emotions. And so one of the things that I had to come to learn is, after you talk about that, you share that story or even your point of view, what is it that you really want your audience to take away from that? And
Mhm.
being able to, make sure that you include that inside of your posting or inside of your videos, is like, what do you want them to take away? And once I really understood, if that there's something that I want to talk about, I want to share on social media, like, wrap it around the story, because people will remember the story, they will remember the experience, they'll connect with that, and it makes it a whole lot easier for them now to accept the content that you're sharing. But like I said, it takes being vulnerable. I know when we sit and we work on our content, you always ask me all the time, Taria, what's the story? And I'm like, oh God, I don't want to talk about this story. Right? I mean, but that's being honest and being true. Like, I do still have moments like that. Like, oh my gosh, this is so personal. It's putting me in this vulnerable and open space. But when I share it, it's so good to come back and see the messages, and like you said, the engagement, and how people are saying that this has impacted or this has shifted the way of doing business or just the way of thinking, is absolutely amazing.
For sure. For sure. For sure.
Yeah, so I do have another question for you. I'm sorry. Were you about to say something?
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm excited this morning. Lots of stuff going on. My mind is just like, woo. All right. So, how can modeling authentic leadership and mentorship impact your success?
This is a really interesting question, because it goes back to what you were saying in terms of someone posts something and it's a rant, or someone shares something and you're wondering why they're sharing it. Storytelling, to me, is a form of leadership and form of modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so how it impacts your success is really you're giving people a view into your journey. I
Mm-hmm.
want everyone to really sit and appreciate that. I'm giving someone a view into my journey. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I'm accountable for where I take the audience, and it must have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So um, how it really depicts our leadership ability is, am I thinking of my audience in such a way that I allow myself to be responsible and accountable for where I take them,
Mm-hmm.
what I expose them to, and what journey I guide them through. And so as I model that, I'm actually giving people a glimpse into who I be as a coach, as a trainer, as an individual, and I'm giving them a glimpse into who I be off stage,
Mm-hmm.
how I conduct myself and how I treat and engage the audience, how responsible I am, is I'm actually modeling my leadership ability.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that when I tell a story, I am touching some soft places. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
people. Pain, frustration, struggle, anger, hurt, all these things. Those are
Right.
what stories do. They expose people. So part of when I do that, I also have to get to a place where there's a lesson, there's an aha, there's a shift. So the person goes, oh, I
Right.
did not see it that way. And I'm modeling it because I'm saying, like you, I was sitting here and I had to learn this lesson. I had to have this epiphany. I had to have this moment where I got face to face with myself. And in that moment, I am also modeling, I get it. You're sitting here looking at the world this way.
Mm-hmm.
Consider you have to take responsibility and look at the world this way. So I bring them along the journey. And as I'm modeling what I went through, I'm actually guiding them through this is what you got to do. But I'm not going to finger point at you. I'm going to finger point at me. I'm going to model it for you. And
Mm-hmm.
then once you go there, you say, But let me tell you what happened.
Mhm.
Let me tell you about my breakthrough. Let me tell you about my transformation and how the world opened up. And then I'm actually saying, well, if you go through this, in the same way the world opened up for me, there's a huge possibility it'll open up for you. And then I'm saying, and for those of you who are ready, I will guide you because I've walked the path and I know the road, the landmines, and I know how to avoid these things. So through my modeling, I'm also demonstrating I can lead you. So I'm giving you the type of leader I am, how responsible and accountable I am for you, that I will take care of you as I guide you. And I've been here before. So this is not theory for me. This is a walked experience that I can hold your hand and bring you through. That is leadership, because leadership is the experience of going first.
Mhm.
Leadership is the blazing the trail, and leadership is the ability to turn around and say, I got you. I can teach you this. Different to what most people think.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
hope that answered.
No, it really did. And I'm just there sitting and I'm thinking, to myself, the veil and the curtain of social media has just been pulled back and exposed, because I think what people are really and truly seeing is, or looking at, is that they are looking, for, like you said, those people that they could lock arms with. And the only way that they see that is that if they have an insight to who you are and an insight to your journey. So it isn't just about, putting up the polish, stuff on social media. People really want to see, where you started.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They want to see you go through the middle, and they want to see, the transformation, what's possible for them. And this is, I'm smiling because I'm just sitting here thinking that this is why social media is such a great storyboard.
It
So
is.
it's a way of just chronicling the journey, and give people an insight, to see, how you're walking through the world, how you are leading yourself through the world and through your process. And, before they make that commitment, because this is who we're speaking to specifically, we're speaking to our entrepreneurs, our coaches and our consultants who are out there trying to, attract their tribe, and become more magnetic and engaging in the marketplace. And this is why this is so important, because I hear it all the time. People say, how can I build my group? How can I build my tribe? How can I engage more on social media? But this is it. You have to be able to show up, in that space where people can see the journey, they could see themselves in the journey, and then be willing to lock arms with you to move forward. So this is awesome.
Mm-hmm.